My father destroyed our relationship by choosing his new family, spoiling them, and forgetting I even exist. When I was younger, my dad was my hero. We had a bond that was unshakable. Even though my parents split up when I was just a baby, I'd stay with my mom during the week, but weekends were sacred. Dad and I would pack in as much fun as we could. We had this routine: 5 red box movies, hours of fishing, soccer games, and biking to a hidden playground only we knew about. Life felt safe and simple back then. Then everything changed. Started small, like a bad dream creeping into reality. Dad had always dated, but the women never stuck around long. Just faces passing by like ghosts. The only one who lasted more than a heartbeat left when I was 10. But even then, things stayed normal between us. But then she came, his new wife. I was 12 when she appeared, and it was like something snapped in him. She wasn't alone. She had 2 kids of her own, one older and one younger than me. They moved in almost overnight, and that's when my life got shoved to the side. My tiny room was gutted, my mattress crammed into a corner to make space for her daughter's bunk bed. Soon enough, my bed was tossed into the closet when I wasn't there, like I didn't even exist. Eventually, they forgot to even take it out when I came to visit. Felt like I was just fading away. When Dad got a bigger house, it didn't get any better. The older sister got her own room, of course. Me? I had to share with the younger one. My 3 small drawers, the last bit of space that was mine, quickly shrank to just one because the little brat demanded more room for her endless pile of toys. Every weekend, I could feel myself being pushed further out, like an unwanted guest. But it got worse, so much worse. Dad's new wife got pregnant, and just like that, I was completely forgotten. A whole year passed before I even knew they were married. When my half-sister was born, I didn't find out until weeks later. He didn't even bother to call. His new family became everything to him, and he showered them with everything they wanted. My stepmom, a lazy gold digger, stayed at home, doing nothing but cooking, shopping, and draining his wallet. Her older daughter? Dad's paying for her college without a second thought. The younger one? She's like some Sephora-obsessed princess at just 10 years old, spoiled rotten. And my half-sister? A toddler already learning that the word no doesn't exist for her. I, on the other hand, became invisible. Dad stopped paying child support for me and my mom, too busy sinking every penny into his shiny new life. The fun weekends we used to have? Gone. I wasn't part of his world anymore. I should have turned to my stepdad. He'd been with my mom since I was 5. But somehow, I'd grown to hate him. I never understood why. Mom told me later that when I was little, I once called him Dad. My real father didn't like that. He told me I shouldn't love him because he wasn't really my dad. That's when the resentment started to grow, creeping into my thoughts like a shadow I couldn't shake. Now, I can barely stand to be around my father or his new family. The house I used to feel so safe in has become a haunted place, where I don't belong, where I'll always be an outsider. I can't help but resent him for it, for choosing them over me, for letting me slip through the cracks while his new family gets everything. It's like I've been erased, like I never even mattered to him at all. And that's the scariest part, realizing that maybe I never did. Over the past few years, my dad's changed in ways I never expected. At first, it was subtle, almost easy to brush off until it wasn't. He started ranting about all these bizarre political beliefs, talking like he knew some dark secret about the world that no one else could see. Aliens, conspiracies, things that made my skin crawl. He'd go on and on about his new business, bragging about his perfect little family, like he was rubbing it in. And the worst part? He never wanted to hear about my life. Every time I tried to share something with him, anything, he'd cut me off, annoyed, like my voice was just background noise. It was like I didn't matter anymore, like I was just another person to unload his stories on. Somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like his daughter. To him, I was just a buddy, a pal to talk to, not someone to care about. But what really broke me was learning the truth behind my parents' divorce. All my life, I believed it just didn't work out between them, but the truth was much uglier. My dad had cheated on my mom. He wasn't some victim of a failed relationship. He was the one who broke it. Now I'm 15 and I'm nothing like the girl my dad used to know. I don't love soccer anymore, and the beach doesn't excite me the way it did when I was little. I'm into music now, writing, and I've already published 2 books since 2022. I'm working on my third, and my stepdad, my real dad, couldn't be more supportive. He brags about me to anyone who'll listen, tells people how proud he is to call me his daughter. His biological daughter lives up north, and even though I don't see her often, she's like a real sister to me. I love them both more than I'll ever love my birth dad and his new family. My birth dad, though? He blames me for everything, says it's my fault I don't call him, like it's my responsibility to keep our relationship alive. But how could I when he's made it so clear I'm not really part of his world anymore? I go months without visiting, and when I do, it's painfully obvious. I'm just a guest in his house. The bed I sleep on is the guest bed, tucked away like an afterthought. Every time I set foot in that house, I feel more out of place, more unwelcome. The resentment is building inside me, like a dark cloud I can't shake. I haven't told anyone how much I hate the way he treats me, and maybe that's why no one calls me a jerk for feeling this way. But I can't help but wonder, am I the bad guy for not being happy for him? For not being able to stomach his new life, his new family? Am I wrong for not caring? Update. So, a few months ago, I posted about how my dad stopped treating me like his daughter. Since then, not much has changed, but here's an update anyway. I've only been to his house once since the last post, and yeah, nothing's different. I'm still just a stranger in that place. Every few months when I don't visit, my dad tries to act all innocent. He'll call me on Fridays, asking when he can pick me up like everything's fine. But he always calls when I'm busy, usually in class or studying, and I never answer. It's like he doesn't even realize that I don't want to be there. Or worse, he knows and he just doesn't care. He'll call my mom sometimes, trying to figure out why I'm avoiding him. But it's always last minute, like I'm just an afterthought. He never asks in advance if I'm free on weekends. By the time he remembers I exist, I've already made plans with my cousins, my friends, or I'm deep in my writing. I'm still working on my third book, and it takes so much focus I can never get at his house. Actually, I'm done calling him Dad. From now on, he's just Eric. He hasn't been a father to me for years, not the way my stepdad has. The strangest part? It's my mom who insists I keep visiting him, even though Eric hasn't paid child support in over 2 years. I hate going to his house, but she says I need to keep him from dragging us into court. Confuses me. One minute, she's calling him a deadbeat, and the next, she says I should show him respect, that he's still my father. But how can I respect someone who doesn't even care if I'm around? He never asks me about my life, never pays what he owes. What's the point? One Christmas, Eric bought a mountain of gifts for his shiny new family, wrapping them in bright, festive paper. I didn't get anything wrapped. No, he drove me to Walmart when his wife was doing groceries, handed me $200 and said, "Merry Christmas. Get yourself something. The rest can go towards child support or whatever." I bought 2 books, but it was laughable. That money wasn't even close to what he owed, like throwing pennies into a well expecting them to matter. I've told my mom that I'd be happier if Eric lost custody of me altogether and my stepdad adopted me. My real dad, the man who actually shows up in my life. But she thinks that's too extreme. He's still your dad, she says. He deserves your respect and love. I don't understand her sometimes. Respect? For what? For abandoning me? The last weekend I visited him was the same nightmare as always. From the moment Eric picked me up, it was like I didn't exist. He droned on about his new family, bragging about his older daughter and her boyfriend, the younger daughter and her shopping sprees, and then my half-sister who can talk a little now. I stayed silent, just staring out the window, waiting for it to end. He finally asked me a question about school, but the moment I answered, he got frustrated and launched into some wild conspiracy rant about how the government was hiding the truth from us. I tuned him out after that. It was all I could do to keep from screaming. The rest of the weekend? It was worse. The older sister locked herself in her room like she always does when I visit, avoiding me like I'm some kind of curse. She only came out when I was gone or in the bathroom, like even the sight of me was too much. The younger sister had a friend over, and they both treated the bed I'm supposed to sleep in like it was their play space, tossing their things all over it. Her friend was lounging on my bed, like it belonged to her. And in that house, I guess it did. Eric's wife didn't bother hiding how irritated she was that I was there. She shot me looks, her mouth tight with annoyance. More than once, I caught her whispering to Eric, her voice laced with disbelief. "You didn't tell me she was coming." It was like my presence was an inconvenience, like I didn't belong there at all. And maybe I didn't. Maybe I never did. I couldn't even argue with her. Most of that weekend was the same old story. Eric dragging me and my half-sister to some playground so she could run wild with her friends while I sat alone on a bench trying to read. Could have been bearable, but Eric didn't let me have a moment to myself. He kept vanishing, leaving me with the wonderful task of babysitting my half-sister. She's a wild, fussy kid, impossible to control, and definitely not my responsibility. But there I was, 2 days of pure chaos and discomfort, forced to play the role of the babysitter for a child I didn't want to watch. I love kids, sure, but that doesn't mean I want to sacrifice my time for someone else's kid, especially not his kid. By the end of it, I felt drained, frustrated, like the life had been sucked right out of me. When I got home, I told my mom I didn't want to go back there anymore. She said she understood and wouldn't make me, but she's said that before, and I didn't believe her. It's hard to trust her when every time she promises, I end up back in that house. I don't have anyone to talk to about this mess, and the stress is building up inside me like a storm I can't control. It gnaws at me, this feeling that maybe I should be happy for Eric. He seems happier than I've ever seen him before, but I can't shake the bitterness. I don't know how to feel or what to do. Everyone who's commented on my last post said I'm not the jerk, that Eric isn't acting like a real dad. But he still reaches out sometimes, still calls me his baby girl. And when he says it, it almost breaks me. I have to fight back tears because it reminds me of how things used to be, back when I was his baby girl and life didn't feel so empty. Am I overthinking all of this? Overreacting? Feels like my mind is stuck in a loop, spinning between guilt and anger. I wonder if I'm the jerk for not being happy for him. What should I do? Update. Some of you gave me really good advice, telling me to talk to my mom, to stand up for myself. So I finally did. I sat down with her and told her how I really felt about being forced to go to Eric's house. I called him what most of you have, my sperm donor. The conversation was long and hard, and I'm still not 100% sure she won't send me back there. But at least she finally sent Eric a long, angry text. She chewed him out for treating me like an outsider, for failing to pay child support, for everything. But of course, he didn't respond. Why would he? After that, I followed more advice from you guys and wrote him a long message myself, pouring out everything I'd been bottling up for years. I laid it all out. How he's treated me like a stranger, how he only cares about his new family, how he's pushed me aside like I don't matter. The moment I hit send, I felt a cold wave of dread settle over me, like I'd opened a door to something I couldn't close. Because deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. When I sent that text to Eric, the response was worse than I could have imagined. He called me, his voice dripping with anger, and started yelling. He called me spoiled, overdramatic. He said everything was my fault, that our broken relationship was because I never visited, never talked to him. But it was what he said next that hit me the hardest. When I brought up the unpaid child support, he snapped. He accused me of only reaching out for money, like that was the only reason I cared. I felt the tears building up behind my eyes, my chest tightening with every word he spat at me. I couldn't take it. I hung up on him, my hands trembling. Later, he sent a string of furious texts to my mom. But that evening, I found a voicemail waiting for me. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Money's tight for me right now," he said. "I'm completely broke. You know I love you, right? But I know that's a lie. I've seen my younger half-sister's TikTok videos, where she shows off all the expensive Sephora makeup and other ridiculous stuff he buys her. She's living in luxury while he acts like he's scraping by. I think I'm done, really done trying. Some of you suggested I ask my stepdad for help, and I wish I could, but my mom told me something that shattered what little hope I had left. Apparently, my stepdad doesn't feel like he should adopt me. He's a good man, kind and thoughtful, but he avoids conflict at all costs. He thinks adopting me would be like slapping Eric in the face, even though Eric doesn't deserve anything from me, or from him. That cut deep. It made me feel like I'm stuck between two worlds that don't want me. For those of you who were confused, my parents didn't split up because of Eric's current wife. No, that mess started way before. Eric cheated on my mom when I was just a baby. He lived in Canada back then, jumping from one girlfriend to the next like a man who didn't know what loyalty was. Eventually, he moved down here and kept doing the same thing until he met Alejandra when I was 12, knocked her up and married her behind my back. I didn't even know about the wedding until a month after it happened. And here I am, 15 years old, carrying the weight of all this mess. It feels ridiculous that I'm dealing with this much stress at my age, but there's no one I can really talk to about it. I can't turn to my stepdad, he's always working, and even when he's around, my mom's there too. As for her, I don't even know how to explain how hard it is to talk to her. Every time I try, she dismisses me, tells me I'm too young to feel the way I do. The last time I worked up the courage to mention my mental health, I asked her if I could start going to therapy. Her response? She said therapists are dumb, that I should just talk to her or pray to God if something was wrong. But I'm not that religious, and talking to her about anything serious makes my skin crawl. I love her. I do. She's my mom. But she's intense. Too intense. There's something about the way she speaks that makes me want to shut down. Like I can't be honest with her because she won't take me seriously. As for Eric, I haven't heard from him since that voicemail. Honestly, I'm relieved. I don't want to hear his voice, don't want to be dragged into his world of excuses and lies. I need space. I need time to breathe. Maybe someday he'll realize how badly he's messed up. But until then, I don't want to think about him. Not now. Not for a long, long time. If Eric ever realizes how badly he's messed up with me and offers a real apology, maybe I'd think about rebuilding our relationship. But honestly, I'm not holding my breath. As for my stepdad, he may not want to adopt me officially, but that doesn't matter. He still calls me his daughter, never just his stepdaughter. I feel it when he says it. I belong with him. I love his parents like they're my own grandparents, and his entire family is so warm, so loving. It's a world I've never felt with Eric, a place where I actually matter. I might post another update if things change, but for now, I'm just going to focus on school and finishing my third book. Maybe now that I fully understand that Eric doesn't really care about me anymore, I can finally let go and move on. I dedicated my first book to him, and honestly, I don't regret it. I dedicated it to the dad he used to be. It's not like he'll ever read it. He's always said it's dumb that I want to be a writer. But I don't care anymore. I'm done. To everyone who gave me advice and reassured me that I'm not a jerk, thank you. Update 3. A lot of people asked similar questions and it got overwhelming, so I didn't respond directly, but I'll try to answer them here. Some of you suggested talking to a school counselor or someone who could help, but there's a problem with that. I do virtual homeschooling, and my mom works from home a lot. It's not like I have a safe, private moment to talk to anyone without her hovering around. Even if I did, I don't trust adults to keep things like this to themselves. I know it sounds paranoid, but that's just how my brain works after everything I've been through. Many of you also suggested bringing up therapy again with my mom, but trust me, that's a dead end. My mom doesn't believe in therapy at all. She thinks praying to God or lecturing me with Bible verses is the cure for everything. And it's not like my stepdad can help with that either. He's a great guy, but he always sides with my mom to avoid arguments. He's non-confrontational, so he just goes along with whatever she says, no matter how much I wish he'd stand up for me. But I love him anyway. Despite all that, I'm doing okay. In fact, I think things might start getting better soon. My mom is finally planning to file for sole custody and court-ordered child support. It's long overdue. One thing I probably should have made clear earlier is that when my parents divorced, they sorted out custody and child support between themselves, without the court's involvement. The agreement was simple. I'd spend weekends with Eric, and he'd pay my mom $100 per week. I'm pretty sure Eric only stuck to that plan to avoid getting the courts involved in the first place. But even that's fallen apart now. Eric always knew how to put on a good show when it mattered. After all, He only kept up the child support and visits until he could finish his U.S. legalization process. As soon as he got his papers sorted, since he was an immigrant from Canada, everything changed. He stopped paying child support and began spoiling his shiny new family without a second thought, like I was just a distant memory. But last weekend, something in me snapped. I decided I'd give him one last chance, hoping, foolishly, that maybe things would be different. This time, my mom didn't have to force me. I wanted to see if there was anything left of the dad I used to know. The second he picked me up, it was clear I'd made a mistake. We didn't even get down the street before we were fighting. I was excitedly telling him about this business idea I had, where I'd make book boxes, selling books with DIY necklaces and hand-painted bookmarks that matched the book covers. I thought it was a cool, creative idea. But Eric? He shot it down instantly. Told me it was stupid and profitable, a waste of time and money. My heart sank. It was a long, miserable hour drive to his house. Eric was already getting political, angry over every little thing I said. I told him I was thinking about applying to colleges like Harvard or the University of Chicago in the future, and he went off, screaming about dangerous Cuban and Mexican immigrants in Chicago. Then, he called Harvard a waste of time, claiming it was only famous because rich people go there. His ignorance infuriated me, and I couldn't hold back any longer. I yelled at him, telling him he had no right to act so high and mighty over non-white immigrants, considering he wasn't even a citizen himself not too long ago. The whole weekend was a blur of anger. Eric wouldn't stop with his rants, one after another, and for the first time I actually fought back. I didn't just sit there in silence like I usually do, but of course that only made him angrier. He spent the entire weekend complaining about my bad attitude, like I was the problem. I told my mom everything when I got home, but the final straw, the thing that finally pushed her to file for sole custody, was something else. During one of his endless rants, Eric launched into a tirade about the differences between men and women. I remember every sickening word he said, so much so that I ended up writing it all down and texting it to my mom. I begged her not to confront him about it, but she was livid. Here's a taste of what he said. 99% of women just want to latch on to rich men. Nearly all women are greedy by nature. Men don't like successful, independent women because they're prideful and bossy. It's more important for a wife to respect her husband than for him to respect her. And it's wrong for wives to make more money than their husbands. Then, with this disgusting smirk on his face, he added, "But you're the exception, pretty girl." It made my skin crawl. That wasn't even the worst of it. He made casual, cutting remarks about my guy friends, saying some of them weren't real men because they were gay. He even tried to tell me that my summer volunteering opportunity in the Dominican Republic was a terrible idea, calling it a waste of time. Every moment in that house felt suffocating, like I couldn't breathe. The father I used to love was gone, replaced by a man I barely recognized. A man filled with hate, bitterness, and the belief that he was always right. I left that weekend knowing one thing for sure. I was done trying. Here's a scarier, more intense version of the final part of your story. Eric's rant didn't stop there. He went on to talk about how the people in the Dominican Republic are different, and that it wasn't safe for me to volunteer there, even though my mom's entire side of the family comes from that very place. It was just another stab at something that mattered to me, another way for him to tear me down. I won't even bother listing every annoying thing he did that weekend. What's important is that this was his last chance, and he blew it. I'm done. I'm pretty sure my mom isn't sending me over to his place anymore. This morning, she was tearing through the house looking for my birth certificate, wondering if she'll need it for court. She's ready to go all in and get full custody, and I'm with her. If we can get him to pay the child support he owes, it would be a huge relief, especially with college on the horizon. Eric owes so much in back payments, and having him contribute financially for once could help me prepare for my future. Also, for those who've been asking, I didn't mention the titles of my books in my earlier posts. I didn't feel comfortable sharing them with a bunch of internet strangers since my social media tags are in the back of the books. But if you DM me, I'll gladly tell you what they are. I'll probably post another update if anything else happens. Hopefully, the next one will be after we've gone to court. To everyone who's reached out and told me I'm not the jerk, thank you. Divorce is complicated, and parenting even more so. My bio dad, though? He's not just failing, he's utterly and completely let me down. I understand why my mom and stepdad tried to keep some kind of relationship between us. It's what everyone tells divorced parents to do because it's usually better for the kids. But it's not better when the parent doesn't care. And if my mom kept me from going, she could have gotten into trouble since there's still a custody agreement in place. As for my stepdad, I get it now. He can't adopt me unless Eric's parental rights are terminated by the court. And if Eric fought it, it would be an ugly, drawn-out mess. My stepdad's reluctance to start that battle doesn't mean he loves me any less. I know that now. He shows me every day how much he loves me. He may not have adopted me on paper, but in every way that matters, he's already my father. I'm relieved my mom's finally moving forward with getting full custody and child support. Eric needs to be held accountable for what he's done, or rather, for everything he hasn't done. I'm sad, though, because in a way, I've lost my bio dad. He may still be alive, but the father I once knew is long gone. And it's not my fault. It's not because of me. He's just poured all his energy into a woman who satisfies his needs, and that's where his focus stays. It's a painfully common story, but that doesn't make it any easier. There's this guy, probably in his 50s, who works for a different company in the same building as mine. He's got this unnerving habit of blocking the doorway by leaning against one side and stretching his arm out across it, only if a woman happens to be approaching the door at the same time. He never says a word, just gives this creepy smile and holds eye contact for a few seconds before he lets you pass. It's like a twisted little game he plays, and it's been making everyone uncomfortable for a while now. Today, it was finally my turn. I got to the main building door right behind him, expecting the usual courtesy of someone holding the door open like a normal person. But no, he stood there, holding the door with that smug grin plastered on his face, watching me like I was a mouse caught in a trap. I felt my stomach twist as I approached. Can I please enter the building? I need to clock in, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. His response? Wow, gee, fine, sorry, he muttered, stepping aside just enough to let me pass but still holding the door, his eyes never leaving me. I could feel the anger boiling up inside. I snapped back. Stop doing that. We all hate it. Without waiting for a reply, I walked in, my heart racing. The moment I turned the corner from the lobby, I half ran to the stairwell, desperate to avoid sharing an elevator with him. I don't even know what firm he works for. My closest coworker said HR wouldn't do anything because he's not an employee of our company. So reporting it felt useless. But we weren't giving up that easily. A male colleague of ours decided to help. He followed the guy up the elevator after lunch and finally figured out where he works. Some law office on one of the higher floors. That same colleague joked we should make hand-drawn flyers of this creep and post them all over the building to warn people. Honestly, it wasn't the worst idea. Another coworker took your advice and wrote an email to the building management, laying out everything he's been doing. Meanwhile, I went to my department manager, cautiously asked how to handle it, and whether I should report it to our HR. He said it should at least be on record, even if it's tough to prove anything. So I went back, typed up an email and hit send. I CC'd my manager and BCC'd the other women I knew had dealt with him. If my manager thought I was being hypothetical before, he knew now that I was dead serious. The colleague who followed him to the law office joked again, saying we should storm the office together and confront him. Honestly, the idea was tempting, really tempting, but we all knew that wasn't going to fly. It's a law firm and we're just a call center. Date 1. Yesterday was a long day. I came in early, partly to make up for the time I'd lost focusing on this nightmare, but mostly to avoid running into him. Unfortunately, one of my coworkers bumped into him in the afternoon, and it was the same story, he's still doing it. She went straight to our manager to report it, but as of now, not much has changed. It's only been a day, so I didn't expect a miracle. Some of you asked what he looks like, so I asked around. What celebrity does he remind us of? We all agreed. He's got that same unsettling vibe as someone you'd see in a creepy thriller. Always lurking, always watching. It's just a matter of time before something changes. We won't stop until it does. It's still crazy to me, but we all agreed. He looks exactly like the jump to conclusions guy from Office Space. Except taller. Way taller. The guy's over 6 feet at least, and it makes him even more unsettling when he looms there, smirking like he's in on some twisted joke that only he finds funny. I can't thank everyone enough for all the support and advice. I've been recommended pepper spray more times than I can count, and trust me, I do carry it. But the one time I had to use it, it got in my eyes too, so now it's my last resort. In the bullpen, I told everyone about our new plan. If he tries anything again, whip out your phones. Take a picture or video. Even if you're standing off in the distance, get something on record. We've all frozen up in the moment before, and honestly, it's terrifying how easy it is to go numb when you're caught off guard. Having a plan makes me feel a little more in control. One suggestion stood out: wearing big, over-the-ear headphones. Apparently, people are more likely to ignore you when you look like you're in your own little world, which makes attention seekers feel insignificant. I gave it a shot today, and I've got to admit, I felt kind of cool rocking them on the light rail. Way more comfortable than my AirPods. When I arrived at the office, something strange happened. No one was hanging around the main entrance. Maybe it was just a coincidence, or maybe it was because of the email. It's too early to know if anything official has been done. But for once, I didn't have to deal with him. Still, my nerves were shot. I've been rereading the email I sent to management, and it feels like my stomach's doing flips, like I'm a kid about to get in trouble. But this had to be done. One person DM'd me, joking that next time someone should blast Toto on Poco from Dirty Dancing and start a limbo line, inviting everyone to join in. It actually made me laugh, which was a nice break from the stress of all this. A lot of you asked what I wrote in the email, so here's the copy-paste with identifying details removed. Subject: workplace harassment incident in shared building. 2. Building management. Law firm. I am writing on behalf of myself and several employees at call center company, located on the 3rd floor of our shared building, to inform you about ongoing harassment that we've been experiencing for several weeks. An employee at your firm has been intentionally intimidating women by blocking their path as they travel to and from our offices. He uses his body to obstruct doorways and will not move aside until a verbal exchange occurs, effectively forcing an interaction. As far as we have observed and documented, this behavior is only directed toward women, which strongly suggests sexual harassment. This kind of behavior is unacceptable and creates a deeply uncomfortable work environment. Despite working in different organizations on separate floors, he often lingers around the building lobby and main entrance, making him one of the first interactions many of us have in the mornings. Additionally, he has been observed stalling the elevator doors to further prolong these encounters. I keep rereading it, my nerves on edge. My stomach flips every time I look at it, but I know it was the right thing to do. Hopefully, we'll see some action soon. I'll post another update when more happens, hopefully today. He's also been blocking access to the button panel in the elevator, making it impossible for anyone to press their floor without interacting with him. This behavior sets an uncomfortable tone, interfering with our ability to feel secure in our workplace. Many of us have tried to address the issue directly with him. I personally told him, firmly, that we don't appreciate or like his actions, but nothing has changed. We are now requesting that your firm take immediate action to investigate and address this harassment. Our department manager and HR have already been informed, and they are awaiting a response from your team. I have CC'd both our HR department and the Plaza building manager on this email. With 6 different organizations sharing this building, it's fair to assume our employees are not the only ones being subjected to this behavior. Please inform us when call center company can expect to see the results of your investigation, as well as what steps will be taken to ensure this behavior doesn't continue. We trust you will resolve this issue quickly and take appropriate action to ensure all employees working at Plaza Building feel safe, respected, and free from harassment while traveling to and from their offices.